All right, you ready?
I guess so.
Yep. And I'll just pause when I'm ready to go to the next slide. So no big deal. All right, let's do it. All right. Hello, hello, and welcome this afternoon. Thank you so much for attending today's webinar, Advancing Education, Documenting Learning Journeys for the Modern Learner. We're so excited to have you here with us today. So as I'm getting things kind of started, go ahead and use the chat to tell us who you are, where you're from, what your role is in education, what brings you here, and feel free to share your X handle so that we can keep that community building going. So if you have any questions during the webinar, go ahead and let us know by popping those in the chat, and I will monitor those as we go through things. We'll react to questions in time if it's appropriate, but we'll kind of talk about them at the end if need be. You can also post questions using the Q&A feature. I'll also be monitoring that. That's down there at the bottom of your Zoom window, and we'll collect those and address them at the end as well. And if you can't see or hear me, or you're having some technical issues, kind of peek behind some of those windows that you might have open. Sometimes an extra Zoom window likes to hide, or if you're just having issues overall, close out, pop back in using that same link that you used to join, and hopefully that will take care of things. And of course, as always, there is an on-demand version of this webinar available at the same link you used to join today, approximately 30 minutes after we end today's session. And you can always go check out our library of recorded webinar sessions at forward-edge.net/webinars. We've got all of those ready for you if you want to go back, peek through some things. Maybe you missed one that you really wanted to attend, or just a little refresher. We've got all of those ready for you. And of course, feel free to share what you're learning and what you're excited about on X using the hashtag FEK12. So let's go ahead and get started. My name is Tori Medlet, and I am an instructional design coach here at Forward Edge in Cincinnati, Ohio. And our amazing Katie Makovich, is going to present with us today. We affectionately refer to her as Katie Mack, and I think we thought we came up with that, but then it turns out everybody else calls her that, as evidenced by her X handle. So I think we should still claim it. She's going to present our content today, so keep your eyes on the chat for things that people notice, things that people point out, and anything that you might want to share with the rest of the viewers. So going ahead with a little bit about who we are at Forward Edge. We do everything for schools, K-12, everything tech related, and that means things from providing devices, monitoring networks, to having a team of people that run cables that hang the materials and the tech needed for projectors and all kinds of electronics and tools. But a little over 3 years ago, the question was asked, when we get those things in the hands of students and teachers, what do you do with it then? And from there on out, curriculum and integration was born. And now we have a team of former teachers from across the board, bringing in a whole bunch of perspective and talent to the team to help serve on a daily basis, whether that be providing PD, we're doing now, working in schools and serving as on-site coaches. We're always providing planning services and serving in multiple different ways to make tech integration seamless and progressive as things ever grow and evolve. So I think that's all about us right now. Katie, you ready?
Here we go.
All right, let's go.
All right. Hi, everybody. We're going to start quickly just by looking at the ISTE standards that are relevant to today's topic. You'll see them all here. Those fall heavily into the designer, facilitator, and analyst side of that graphic. And it's basically all about personalizing learning to accommodate differences, using digital tools to maximize active learning, to engage students, helping students set goals, and on the teacher side, collecting that data to build student self-direction and to build on what we do in the classroom. So what we're going to look at more specifically is digital portfolios and 3 sides of that. We're going to look at what is a digital portfolio and why would I even do it? We're going to look at some practical tips for how to structure it, some tools you could use to create them and for students to use in their portfolios. And we're going to look at how you might choose to grade these. And then the last part, the who are we really doing this for, and who's really doing most of the work. Spoiler alert, it's the students. So those are our 3 sections today, and we're starting with what is it and why would I do it? So first, it's essentially an online collection of student work that leverages technology to make it more interactive and more dynamic. So we're taking it from that binder of physical artifacts and paperwork of years ago and making it something that the reader, the person viewing the portfolio, can choose a path, can interact with, can make it kind of their own in how they choose to view it. And it provides a lot of flexibility for students. It can be a year-long process, but since we're here at the end of the school year, you could also use this as a summative or cumulative end-of-year experience for students. Some more of what it does, we are using these portfolios to showcase student learning, showcase achievements, reflection, growth. It's really about that reflection, growth, and learning, and less about just that final grade. This is an opportunity for students to revise previous work, show how they grew over the course of the year. And it's really highlighting the fact that a grade is just a pinpoint in time and not the end all be all of the learning process. It also means that this can apply to any grade level or any subject level or subject area. And I'm going to show you some examples of how that could work with different content areas. So the students themselves have to curate and organize and present their work in multiple formats. And this is the real benefit of having a digital portfolio versus a paper binder portfolio, because students can include photography, video, audio, artwork that they've created, either digitally or physical artwork. You can include links to things, you can include documents, all of the kinds of things that you may not be able to include in a paper format. And since we're talking about lots of different formats and possibilities for students, it's important to note that for teachers, you don't have to be an expert on all of the tools that students are using. Depending, of course, on your student's age and ability level, you can let students choose what they want to use, which formats they want to go with, and let them play and figure out tools that they're not as familiar with. That can be a part of the learning process and a part of their reflection that, this didn't work as well because the tool I chose didn't quite work. But I'm putting it in my portfolio anyway to show that I tried. So we have all of these things, but what does the portfolio really do? Why are we really doing it? To really foster a growth mindset, to celebrate effort and perseverance and student growth. So we really want to emphasize that effort, perseverance, and growth over just achievement, over just grades and scores. Like I said, this is not a final evaluation of their work. It's more about their ability to explain what they learned, how they grew, how they changed, and potentially what they still need to work on. So how does it do all of that? Here we have some ways. So authentic assessment can mean a lot of things. It can mean that this is, a real world skill and tool and process, because we as teachers know that we had to create teaching portfolios as we finished up our degrees. Also in any kind of arts or design field, you would be creating portfolios. It can apply to a lot of fields, but authentic assessment can also mean that we're focusing our assessment on what really matters, which in this case is on student learning and student growth. That the assessments are valid indications of the student competence, not confidence, which this is shown in a portfolio because we have lots of evidence of student learning. The students are going to be putting in learning artifacts of some sort that show what they've learned, what they did well, what they didn't do well, where they need to continue to grow and work. Authentic assessment also uses assessment to support learning. So especially if this is an ongoing process for the whole year, You as the teacher see it multiple times and can use it to change up what you're doing and use it as kind of a formative assessment in that way. The portfolios also require metacognition on the part of the students. If we're asking them to reflect on their learning, then they're definitely thinking about what they've done, how they've learned it, how they need to change their thinking, and examine how their learning has changed over time. It's also very personalized because the students can focus on what they want to within their portfolio. And of course, that's within the teacher's requirements and what they're expecting from the assessment or from the portfolio. But the students can talk about what they feel they have learned and how they feel they have grown. And it's really about them. And that ties right into student ownership as well. They can express their own thoughts in the way that makes sense to them. Again, the benefit of a digital portfolio is that you could allow students to reflect through video or audio clips rather than just through writing. They can organize this portfolio, this project in a way that makes sense to them. They can choose different platforms to host it if you allow them to. So if you were with us for Michael's webinar in March, he mentioned the IKEA effect, that people really enjoy and take pride in things that they have had a part in creating. And I think that's a really important part of the portfolio, that you allow students that flexibility and that ownership to really create it in a way that works best for them to show you how they've changed and learned. In addition to all of this, there are also a lot of benefits for students and for teachers and for parents. So for students, they're empowered to be active in their own learning process and to reflect on that and to foster that sense of ownership and agency. For teachers, again, if this is an ongoing all year kind of project, especially, you as the teacher collect all this great data about what students are learning, how they're growing, what they still need to work on. So what interventions you may need to provide. And you can also better assess learning outcomes and provide personalized feedback and differentiation for students based on what you see in those portfolios and in those reflections. And then for parents, it provides this great window into their students' learning. It allows them to track progress and to support you as the teacher and their student, allows them to celebrate their students' learning, and it provides a lot of transparency as far as what's going on in the classroom and what are students actually working on. It's also a great thing to have for parent-teacher conferences to show the parents, here's what we've been doing, here's what your student specifically is thinking about what we're learning. And in a digital format, you can have that available and easy for students or for the parents to access whenever they want to. And at the end of the year, you could host a student showcase if you wanted to, so that all the students can show off their portfolios and the great work that they've done with you over the course of the year. So that's the what and the why we might choose to do this. Now we're going to talk about how do we do this, because I'm sure that's what a lot of people are wondering. So first, you're going to start with clear objectives. Honestly, as a somewhat type B teacher, I often struggled with this. I had a great idea and I was like, I'm just going to give it to the kids and we'll figure out the rest. But you're going to have students who really need to understand, why am I doing this? How am I being assessed? What is the criteria? Which is valid on their part. But I'm very much a big picture person. So I always had to really think about that ahead of time. To go along with that, some students, again, depending on their ability or age level, may need outlines, graphic organizers, writing prompts, or like sentence starters for reflections. They may need some templates or exemplars to look at. So you need to be specific, again, with your objectives and your guidelines, and provide students the resources that are going to support them in being successful in this process. Then, as the teacher, you should be doing regular check-ins with students while they're working on this. So even if it's an end of the year cumulative type project, you want to check in with them a couple of times as you go through this process. It seems to me to be important that the first time you as the teacher see a portfolio should not be when you're looking at it to grade it. You should be making sure that students are on track as you go along. Then you need to also support self-reflection, and that can again mean things like sentence starters, writing prompts. You can also have students, reflect on their learning experiences, the challenges they face, the achievements, the goals. If you had them set goals at the beginning of the year or at any point during the year, this is a great time to reflect on that. Another thing you might do to help you as the teacher, as well as the students, is to have them actually annotate the work for you, especially if it's something that they have revised or a topic or skill that you worked on a lot over the course of the year. You could have them physically write, here's what I changed and how I altered this piece of writing or whatever it is. And that's also a great opportunity to allow them to use some technology and perhaps have a screencast where they have visually on the screen what they did and are telling you about how they changed it or how they grew or what they learned from that experience. And the last thing you want to make sure you include is peer feedback. Have them share with each other, encourage and teach constructive feedback, and support continuous improvements so that students can see what other people are doing and use that in their own portfolios, but also support one another and collaborate with each other. As far as tools you might use for this, there are a lot. These are just a few. I'm not going to go through what all of them are, but some of them don't have words, so you might not know what that logo is. The first one is Genially, which allows for some really interesting visuals and linking within the visual. The second one, the big S, is Seesaw, which is specifically designed for K-5. So it's simple or simpler than some of these others and allows for students to record videos and audio within the platform without having to link to outside resources or do anything that might be a little more complicated. It's all within Seesaw. Padlet and Canva, then we have Book Creator is that other one, which you can create. I'm sorry, I just smacked the mic. You can create basically a digital book with actual turning of pages and looks a little bit more like a traditional portfolio. Then, of course, we have Google Sites, and the last three are all kind of slides type presentations. So I'm going to show you some examples of what some of these might look like. This first one is from an art portfolio. This was in, I believe, a PowerPoint. So slides presentation of some version could definitely work. What I like about this is that it not only shows the work, but it also has an explanation of the work. So this is the kind of reflection that we're going for, that kind of self-assessment. And in that paragraph, the student explains why he structured the work the way he did, and how it shows his current ability and his comfort level with certain types of media. So, when you think of a portfolio, a lot of times you might think of an art portfolio, which is a totally valid use of a portfolio. And this kind of reflection is also what I would typically expect from a writing portfolio. But something to consider is that there are other types of portfolios you may have that aren't based on something like art or writing. There are a lot of templates available on Canva. That's what this is, that show a best work portfolio, which can show the students' best work in, these are for lower levels, these examples here, but across multiple subject areas over the course of the year. And you could also tie this to mastery of standards and skills within your class. So I didn't include any on here, but there are some great resources out there on the internet at large, where teachers have designed projects and portfolios that are based on standards and how students mastered standards, where they still need to grow and learn and work. So recommend looking it up if you want. One last example, something you might think of or choose to do with younger students or students who have trouble with organization, is to give them a simple template like this where they can fill in their own learning artifacts and objectives and their reflections, and they could put in pictures or links to whatever. This is just a slide and I made boxes. So it can be something where you help students organize it as well. And this would be like your table of contents. So the last part of how do we do this is grading. So here's an example of how ChatGPT can help you with this. This took a little bit of finagling and reworking and revising, but I put in this basic prompt of, here's what my students are doing. Here's the basics of how I would like it graded. I want the grade to focus more on the reflection and self-assessment. And I want it to be not just a checklist of like, yes, they included artifacts. Yes, they did it, but that, they were able to self-assess and show their learning. And so then it gave me a 100-point rubric focused mostly on self-assessment and reflection, a little bit about including certain artifacts and the content that was included, and a little bit about the organization and presentation. Because if it's not well organized, what are you as the teacher supposed to do with it, right? So that's still important, that it's easy to follow. On the student side, a tool I might recommend is Magic Student. So if you've been using Magic School already, they recently launched Magic Student. And essentially, you as the teacher get to choose the AI tools within Magic School that the students can access, and you can launch it to your class. So I've included a few here that seem especially helpful for helping students create a portfolio, reflect on their learning, think about how to word reflections, what they can say. So a lot of this is writing based because we're talking about generative AI, so a lot of it is text based. But there's also step-by-step instructions if a student really struggles with how to get started or where to go next. Sentence starters, 5 questions from AI that, get it to ask you some questions to help you keep going. A proofreader, a rewriter to help with editing and revisions, and also a tool that can create exemplars for students if they need a little bit more guidance on what should this look like. I think Magic School and Magic Student are great tools for this, and it really allows you to help your students, and you can also see everything that the students actually do with the Magic Student tools you've given them, and you as the teacher can kind of moderate what they're doing with AI. So that's the how-to. Now we're on to who's doing the work? How are we fostering student growth and reflection and ownership, and why is that important? As I've said, what's really important here is that the grade and the end result is not just about checking that students have turned in work and included certain things in the portfolio. What's important is looking at the reflection and that students are able to reflect on where they started, how they've grown, how they've changed, what they still need to work on. So that's really where the majority of the work and the grade for the portfolio need to fall. So how do we do that? How do we really support students in this and support their learning and their growth? A little bit of reiteration here, but just, in a different light, in a different perspective. The first thing is a flexible structure. There's no one right way to do this. And, maybe you give your students some specific guidelines, maybe you give them some templates to work with, but in the end, they shouldn't all look exactly the same. And there should be lots of room for student voice and student choice in this process. And it should really highlight the students' strengths and their skills and what they're good at and what they want to get better at. So giving students flexibility is really going to give them more buy-in and more, it's really going to personalize the process more for them. The self-assessment portion should be ongoing. So again, if you do this throughout the year, you can help them build this muscle. They can learn to apply it in other places in life to assess themselves, assess their growth, and see where they started and where they are now. Again, peer feedback. Students need to learn how to help each other, how to collaborate, how to communicate. So adding in opportunities for peer feedback, peer review, whether it's one-on-one in small groups. There are ways to do some of this kind of stuff, anonymously, so the students don't even know who read their paper or looked at their work. There are lots of ways to do this, but it's important for students to talk to each other and to know what other students are doing to see how they can then improve their own work. And the last one is really including multimedia for students. We know our students are capable of so much when it comes to video and audio, especially. So, if you let them record their reflections and their self-assessments, they might do better with those reflections. Some students would have trouble writing it down. Some are going to do really well if they can speak into a camera about it or just record the audio like a little podcast, or if they can screen share and show that learning artifact on the screen while they talk about it. And that's the perfect use of a digital portfolio because those are things you couldn't do in a paper binder. And again, it gives literal student voice in that case to the project. So there you have it. There's the what, why, the how, and the who of digital portfolios in any classroom, at any subject level, any grade level. There are definitely ways you can make this work for you and for your students to help them, reflect on their learning and really take control of their own learning. Back to you, Tori.
Yay, thank you, Katie Mack. That was awesome. I'm always in awe of how people can jam pack so much info in such a short amount of time. So thank you so much. Now, that again, a lot of information in a short amount of time. And I do want to say there was one thing that you said that I literally wrote down because it's something that I think is just a good general rule of thumb. And I think you said there's no one way to do this. And I think that's something that people, when I say people, I'm really projecting. It's me. I'm the problem. I think I have to do things the same way everybody else has. And that's where I think I get in my own way. So if you're like me, there's no one way to do it. And I think that's just amazing advice. So thank you, Katie Mack. Now, while I go over some of our FE services and you have something in your brain that you're like, wow, that was cool, or just an aha or an epiphany, throw that in the chat. We'd love to hear it. So one of the services we have here at Forward Edge, if you're interested in renewing or earning your Google for Education certification, so your level 1, level 2, or trainer, we offer comprehensive training experiences for that, whether it be in person, virtual, and these are led by Google certified trainers. So really a one-stop shop for all your Google certification needs, and we can help out with that. So if you're interested, check out that link down there at the bottom. And this is one of another amazing services that we offer here at Forward Edge. If you have some specific classroom needs that you need to meet, and as educators, time is always the factor, you should check out our Anytime, Anywhere EduBadge program. We have some amazing people that are putting things into motion on EdU by creating badges that keep up with all of the new trends in technology, all the new tools that are ever changing. You might hear some familiar voices if you go check it out, maybe mine, maybe some other people's, who knows. So we've got people working really hard to keep those updated, to keep those relevant. And our Edu team really works hard to make those beneficial for being able to turn around and implement what you learned in your classroom immediately, and you can see that direct impact in learning. So you can also earn points as you're earning badges, and those can be turned into contact hours or graduate credits. So it's really, really useful for accomplishing a couple of different tasks with something that you can do when the time is right for you. So shout out to EdU and all those that make it the amazing resource that it is. Cyber security, I said it a million times, we've said it a million times, it's an important skill. It really is a skill, one that I'm still learning to be aware of. So if you are looking for some extra tips, some training, we have those for you at the link provided. So keep up on your cybersecurity, make sure you're keeping things safe for you, your family, your students, all of the above. And one of the most beneficial things that I've ever participated in as a camper is Forward Edge Coaches Camp. One of the things about being a coach is you kind of feel a little isolated sometimes, and you need to find time and find places where you can be with those who are encountering some of the same struggles or the same, highs that you are. So Forward Edge's Coaches Camp, we're doing it again this year virtually and here in Cincinnati, Ohio. If you're interested, check out that link down below. It's really great to learn strategies, how to market yourself, learn about planning PDs and utilizing coaching models. Coaches Camp was the place for me. It might just be for you. So keep your eyes peeled for more information about that or visit the link below. And then, like I said, coaching, sometimes you can feel like you're on an island. So keeping the community alive and well and thriving is so important. We at Forward Edge have a bunch of coaching resources, from Coaching Camp, like I just mentioned, to our EduCoach collective, the EduCoach network, where we have all kinds of professional instructional coaches linking up, talking strategy, talking about and exchanging information, as well as our amazing Restart Recharge podcast, which has a lot of resources, a lot of information, and a lot of good conversation as well. So if you're looking for the coaching community, look no further. We've got it for you here at Forward Edge. This is where I would usually say sign up for next month's webinar, but this was our last one of the year, the school year that is. And if you have been with us the whole time, this was my first year hosting. So thank you for making it amazing. I've seen some repeat attendees, and thanks to my team for stepping up and doing an amazing job to make this information so good for the people that attend. So we'll be back in the early fall, kind of Augusty area, with some more webinars for you. And thank you for attending. We will see you for the next season.